It's lemon cake. So good. That is so good. This video is not a cake eating video. This is a books video. Sorry to disappoint. Welcome to Chapters and Truffle. Officially welcome. This is the first episode in my books review series. I love reading. I love talking about books with other people. I think that it's going to be a really great series that we have. So I'm going to be chatting about books every Tuesday, whether that's my monthly reads, recommendations, books that made me cry, books that made me laugh, whatever the case may be. Tuesdays are for all things books. So let's get into it. So this month's reads weren't light by a long shot, but they're the kind that stay with you. I first read these 4 books years ago, and it was only recently or this month, that I decided to pick them back up, reread them, have another look at them. Some of them I didn't enjoy the first time I read, and on the second reading, I really wished that I had read it again sooner than I did. So these books are about ego, they're about regret, they're about things falling apart, and people still trying to make things work nonetheless. So if you like books that have a lot of grit, a lot of wit, and there's a rhyme, and a lot of grey area, then these books are for you. The grey area, I think, in all of these books is the main theme throughout, and finding out what's right and what's wrong amongst the grey, if there's any. So the first book I want to talk about is Amsterdam by Ian McEwan. This book I read a couple of years ago and I loved it. I love Ian McEwan. I find all his books so different. And this one was incredible. This was actually my only strict fiction pick of the month, which is very surprising for me because I usually only reach for fiction. It's witty, it's brutal, it's manipulative. So the story follows 2 old friends, a composer and a newspaper editor, and they reunite at their ex-lover's funeral. Here they begin competing in manipulative, ridiculous ways, kind of for her memory. That makes sense. It's darkly funny, it's very lavish, and honestly kind of mean. The 2 main characters, but actually all the characters in this book, are successful, they're accomplished, they're lavish, and they're incredibly petty. McEwan kind of encourages the audience to play with this idea of how do supposedly good people justify their worst decisions. What I loved about it is how tight it is. It's only 170 pages, and it is sheer manipulative psychological warfare the whole way through. It kind of reminded me that you don't need 600 pages in a book to be completely ruined. 170 pages will do it for you. But I also found this book really witty. I was like smiling and laughing in certain bits at just how ridiculous some of what they were doing. This is one of my favorite books, and is a book that I recommend to people when they ask me. It's beautiful. So the second book I want to talk about is What is History by E.H. Carr. This was the book that I read when I was 18 for high school, when I was doing extension history, and I didn't love it. I really didn't love it. And I kind of wish I had done the second read sooner. It's not a heavy book, and the ideas aren't particularly heavy or complicated or difficult to understand, but I find it to be a very foundational book, especially if you're interested in history, in the past, in psychology, in almost remembering your own memories. If you're interested in reading memoirs or anything along those lines, it's a great book for you. So originally this book was a history of lectures, and Carr throughout argues that history is a conversation between the past and the present. So he kind of presents the idea that the past and history is shaped by the person who's telling it, which for a lot of people is quite self-explanatory. He tells it in such an interesting way, and in a way that kind of forces you to question almost everything you've read. He provides the example of medieval history and how typically in a lot of history books, medieval peasants are portrayed to be quite religious, but actually the people who were first documenting medieval history were quite religious themselves and wanted to paint these medieval people and these medieval peasantry as being religious because that's what they liked and that was their values at the time. So he kind of encourages the readers to ask not so much what is the truth, but whose truth are we reading? Whose bias are we reading when we read a piece of history? This book really made me reconsider how I read different books, how I read memoirs, how I watch the news, even how I remember my own thoughts and my own memories. It's definitely a more academic read, but it's not very heavy and it's not dense and overly complex. The ideas aren't really difficult to grasp and they're explained really, really well with some very, very interesting examples. So I can definitely recommend this book. It's really good. This is so good, this cake. You want some more? The third book I actually don't have a copy of. I read it on my brother's Kindle, but it is called, I'll leave a picture here. It is called The Checklist Manifesto. I might be butchering his name, but it's by Atul Gawande, I believe. Basically, he was a surgeon who had a look around and noticed that so many people rely on checklists to get things done, whether that's pilots, whether that's, in different kinds of field, whether that's scientists. And he created a checklist for surgeons because he realized that people were dying because of surgeons forgetting basic and general steps. So he created a checklist for surgeons to use and for other doctors to use in surgery and in other places, and wrote a book about the importance of checklists to get the basics under wraps. When he first created this checklist, this is such an interesting read if you want to learn more about organization and also the history and how things have come about and whether or not having a checklist for something like surgery is a good idea or not. It's such an interesting read. So I can definitely recommend that one as well. A couple of episodes ago, I was talking about how my dog put on like a kilo in a month, and this is why. He just looks at me with his big doe eyes. I don't know how to say no. The final book on my list is definitely my favorite, I think, of this list. I don't know if I said Amsterdam was my favorite, but whatever, I can have two favorites. It's a Russian text. It's called A Young Doctor's Notebook by Mikhail Bulgakov. If you have not gotten into Russian literature and you would really like to, I would definitely recommend this book. It's quite a short read, as you can see, but it's very, very interesting. It's semi-autobiographical. Mikhail Bulgakov, he also wrote The Master and the Margarita, which is very popular and famous. A lot of people have heard of it. But he was actually a doctor who was sent to rural Russia, and these stories they're not an exact reflection of what happened to him, but they're based off his experiences and him living in rural Russia as a doctor. This book is so dark. It is so witty. It's such a page turner. It gripped me so much. I love this book. It is basically follows the life of a doctor who moved from Moscow or St. Petersburg to a rural town in Russia, and it's just snowing and no one there really knows anything about basic medicine, including the doctor by the sounds of it. And he's just kind of going along with it, and he is trying to piece together the best he can as he's going. And as time goes on and he's in this town, he slowly develops a morphine addiction to kind of get through. So it's quite an interesting read. I can definitely recommend it. It's quite gory. There's actually a TV show I think of it with Daniel Radcliffe, which was crazy, but it's a really, really interesting book and I really loved it, and I can definitely recommend it. I don't even know how I ended up picking this up off the shelf when I bought it. What I loved about it is there's no self-pity. He just gets on with it. It's really honest, and it doesn't romanticize medicine at all. It doesn't romanticize rural living. It doesn't romanticize country life. It just shows the raw, hard kind of pain without being over embellishing or dramatic in any way. Thank you so much for joining me for this first book video on Chapters and Truffle. We're going to be talking books every Tuesday, so if this is your vibe and you really enjoy this video, like, subscribe, and make sure you tune in every Tuesday for more book reviews. Let me know in the comments below if you've read any of these books, enjoyed them or didn't enjoy them, and if you have any book recommendations for me. I'm always on the lookout for book recommendations. My to-read list, it can never be too short. It can never lack a book. And I'll see you next time. Bye.